On a quiet summer evening in a small, picturesque village nestled between rolling hills, a young musician named Julian stood beneath the balcony of a charming stone house. In his hands, he cradled a violin, its polished surface gleaming in the soft moonlight. His heart beat faster as he looked up at the window of the balcony, remembering the nights when his beloved Isabella once stood there, gazing down at him with a smile that outshone the stars. Julian and Isabella had been inseparable during their youth, bound by a love that seemed as timeless as the melodies he played for her. Music was their shared language, the notes of his violin entwined with her soft voice as they created their own symphonies under the open sky. But life, with its unpredictable twists, had taken Isabella far from him, across distant lands, and they had lost touch over the years. Still, Julian refused to let go of hope. Every night, as the moon rose high above the village, he returned to the same spot beneath her balcony, believing that somehow she would hear him. The first time he stood there, he had hesitated, unsure if she would ever return. But as his bow touched the strings and the first notes of his serenade filled the night air, he felt a connection, a bond that had not faded with time or distance. Months passed, and Julian's serenade became a nightly ritual. The villagers grew accustomed to hearing the soft strains of his violin floating through the streets, carried on the gentle breeze. Some pitied him, thinking he played for a love long lost, while others marveled at his devotion, admiring the beauty of the melodies that filled their quiet nights. Julian's music was more than a mere performance. It was a conversation between him and Isabella. He played as though she were still there, as though her presence lingered on the balcony, listening to every note. He poured his heart into the serenades, each melody reflecting a different chapter of their love. The tender notes of their first dance, the joyful rhythms of laughter shared under the stars, and the haunting echoes of their final goodbye before she left. Though she was far away, Julian felt Isabella in every chord. He imagined her listening from some distant place, her heart stirring at the familiar sound of his violin. He believed that music could transcend distance, that somewhere in the world she was hearing his nightly serenade and remembering the love they had once shared. As the years went by, Julian continued his moonlit serenades. His hair, once dark and full, had grayed, and lines etched his face where time had left its mark. Yet his passion for the music and for Isabella had never waned. Each night, beneath the moon's watchful eye, he played with the same devotion as he had when they were young. One night, as Julian began his familiar serenade, he felt something different in the air. The wind, usually calm and steady, stirred with an unusual energy, carrying the sound of his violin farther than ever before. The notes seemed to take on a life of their own, filling the streets and echoing through the village in a way they hadn't in years. The village, cloaked in stillness, felt alive with the sound of his song. As he looked up at the balcony, a memory stirred, a distant whisper of Isabella's voice. It was as though the music had conjured her spirit, and for the briefest moment Julian imagined he could see her, standing there in the soft glow of the moon, her eyes filled with the same love he had always remembered. He paused for a moment, his heart racing, but the vision faded, leaving only the empty balcony and the quiet night. Shaking his head, Julian smiled to himself, playing the final notes of his serenade, his faith unshaken. One autumn evening, as Julian stood beneath the balcony, playing a melody filled with longing and hope, a figure appeared in the distance. His heart skipped a beat as he saw a woman walking toward him, her silhouette illuminated by the moonlight. As she drew closer, he recognized her, Isabella. She was older, her hair streaked with silver, but her eyes still shone with the same light that had captivated him all those years ago. Julian's hands trembled as he played the final notes of his song, watching as Isabella stopped in front of him, tears glistening in her eyes. "I heard you," she whispered, her voice soft but steady. "All these years I heard you. Even from far away, your music reached me. Julian lowered his violin, his heart full. I never stopped playing for you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I knew you would hear me someday. Isabella smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. I never forgot our love. Your music kept it alive. Without another word, Julian reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining as they stood beneath the balcony, the same spot where their love had begun so many years ago. The moon shone brightly above them, the stars twinkling like old friends, bearing witness to a love that had endured the passage of time. In the years that followed, Julian and Isabella were inseparable once again. They spent their days reliving old memories, creating new ones, and cherishing the love that had brought them back together. Each night, Julian would play his serenade beneath the balcony. But now, Isabella stood beside him, her presence a constant reminder that love could indeed conquer time and distance. Their story became legend in the village, a testament to the power of music and hope. And as the moon rose each night, the soft strains of Julian's violin would fill the air, not as a plea to the past, but as a celebration of a love that had been lost, but never truly forgotten. One evening, many years later, Julian played his final serenade. As the last note lingered in the air, he looked at Isabella with a smile, his heart full. Together, they watched the moon rise one last time, knowing that their love, like the music, would live on forever.